just the memory.
Hello everybody, hope you guys have been having a good day. It's a really good day. What was your mathematics today, people? I'm gonna cut to the chase. There's been a lot of talk with this Charleston White versus T.I. and his son. I won't even get into the Tootie Raw and Boosie portion of it. You know, I was watching a lot of the back and forths going on, trying to obtain a proper perspective. And I remember everybody of all the things Charleston White was speaking on, there's been a section of this YouTube community that wanted to point out his statements about Trayvon Martin. You know, to a lot of people it might have been offensive. You know, he made a statement involving Trayvon Martin, quote unquote, saying, T.I., I'll Trayvon Martin your son. A lot of people took offense to that. And it brought me back in a time where I was thinking about, you know, where I was at with my family, you know, watching the verdict on Zimmerman when they found him not guilty. And I just remember the emotions pouring out from everyone that was in that house, and it was a lot of us. You know, there were anger. You know, it just brought us to a time when we always go through the motions of seeing black people not get justice. With this Trayvon Martin situation, I won't talk about justice or not guilty or guilty, you know, resolutions. What I wanted to talk about was remembering what happened to Trayvon Martin. And sometimes as black men and women, you know, we get shame tactics put upon us by unpopular opinions or analyzations. And I just remembered thinking, watching him on that ground with a bullet hole through his shirt, just the sadness that came from it. And another part of me was thinking, what if he just played, you know, coy? What if he let his pride take a hit? Let Zimmerman play his little race card, nonetheless, wait till the police get there and see what happens. We know historically everything goes left. But I mentioned, what if he waited, meaning, what if he did not respond to Zimmerman's antagonizing tactics? What if he didn't, you know, lose control and got physical with Zimmerman? Many people said they would have done the same thing, but let's really take a deep look into this. You know, a lot of young black men, and including myself, but to a fault, not that extreme of what Trayvon did in terms of reacting to what he felt was unjust, to what he felt was he was being effed with, quote unquote, and he reacted. You know, what if this young man had conflict resolution techniques? What if he had emotional stability? And for everyone that will probably disregard what I'm saying and think I'm not empathetic or sympathetic to what happened to Trayvon, I just want you to listen real quick. What if he just hold his square and just let his pride take a hit for a second? And I say that because remembering watching that picture of him laying on that wet grass, dead, all the air out of his body, would you rather seeing him like that or seeing him alive? That's something we don't talk about. You know, come back home alive. We can get into the semantics of everything, but that's something that really stayed in my brain. What if he never retaliated with violence? You know, we teach our children, a lot of us, how to retaliate with violence. End of the day, he wasn't met with violence. He was met with threats, but not violence. This was a 17-year-old young man. The optics would have been in his favor, race or not. He would have been alive and home. Because end of the day, yes, he's a young man, and you know, many of us don't expect him to be wise, to see the clarity behind the emotional rage that probably came from having some white man pointing a gun at you, and all you did was come from a store buying Skittles and iced tea, as they famously kept portraying in these videos of him years ago. What if he said, you know what, I'm gonna fight the urge to attack physically and wait and see how all this plays out? What if? Because more than likely he would have been home. And I notice in a lot of our communities, the black communities, our young men react in rage. And now, more so than ever, our young women are doing the same. I just saw a video of a young lady attacking a vehicle and punching the car, you know, all from road rage. You know, we're in an era where emotional rage seems uncontrollable. But I'm telling you, people, it is controllable. When you saw that young man on the floor, Trayvon that is, with a bullet hole out of his shirt, all I'm telling you is, was there any other way other than him attacking Zimmerman? A lot of times we play into the hands of these protagonists. We play into their hands where maybe he wanted Trayvon to do something to make an excuse to use that weapon. You know, sometimes our control in terms of having it and being stable will lead us to get back home, people. And then we can do all the complaining and all the outrage we want, but he would have been alive. You know, that day was very impactful to me, you know. But shock and awe words impact us in different ways, but one way I know for sure doesn't leave the day to be in your favor, and that's really when you retaliate with violence. You know, a threat doesn't have to be met with violence, you know. Sure, say all the words you want, but keep your hands to yourself, people. In that situation, you know, people are using it in terms of Charleston saying, "I Trayvon Martin, your son," to T.I. A lot of people felt offended, and you know what? Of all the things that I like about Charleston, I didn't like that statement, but one thing I understood, it brought me away from the Charleston White T.I. back and forths and made me just think about a young man who seemingly had a history of retaliating, and that cost him his life. And that's something a lot of elders aren't preaching about or talking about. You know, we like to talk about the unfairness of things, but there's a lot of things that are unfair. But, you know, I dare you all to contemplate this. Make it back home alive. Make it back home alive. You know, in that instance, that young man had no fear of consequences. If anything, there's a lot of young brothers in the community, specifically when it's race situations, they're not worried about the consequences coming from a white man that's threatening them or being racist. You know, in most instances, we want to retaliate. We want to show you we ain't no punk, we ain't no coward. I mean, look what we do to each other, you know. That was a situation where I truly believe if that young man had an ounce of stability inside of him and just let everything play out, he might have took a hit to his pride. He might have been outraged about it, but he would have been alive, most probable. The validity of a threat, I understand where it can be met with violence. But if your first reaction is basically to retaliate with violence. All I'm saying is understand the consequences that can come with that. And that's all I was thinking about, because I have a 15-year-old son. Imagine if I taught him, you know, to attack a racist. Somebody pulls out a gun on you and say, hey, wait here till the cops come. Folks, that's a bullet that possibly can enter his frame. And he may not be able to sustain that and lose his life. Overwhelmingly, most of us cheered on the fact that Trayvon reacted violently, but no one thought about, well, I won't say no one, you know, that's being narcissist. Most folks didn't think about the fact that had he not resisted in violence, he would have been alive. We could have complained about the optics later, talked about the injustices, but he would have been alive. So when you're looking at your young teenage children, I'm speaking to people who have teenage sons specifically, would you rather your son alive and at home where possible lawsuits can be, you know, put in the court system and let it do its thing? Or would you rather your son go through the motions of violence, being killed, having all this march happen and everything go on like that, but your son's not here, your son's dead? You know, folks, it's conflict resolution, man. We got to think about the bigger picture.